paradrama tales.
After our family reunion, I checked my account. It was drained. $14,000 vanished, and my brother-in-law smirked. We needed it more than you. How would you react when your own kin treats your life savings like a family courtesy? The living room shimmered with holiday warmth. Twinkling lights, the scent of roast turkey, children's laughter bouncing off the walls, until I slipped away to check my banking app. My heart hammered as the screen blinked. 14,000, then 87. 3 frantic taps and a forced refresh later, the number never budged. I stood frozen, phone trembling in my hand, when Seth leaned casually against the fridge, beer in one hand, and that smug half-grin plastered across his face. "Relax," he snorted. "We needed it more than you." Behind him, Sarah lounged on the couch, legs curled under her, swirling wine as though this were a scripted sitcom. "Don't be so dramatic," she drawled. "It's not like we stole it. We're family." My voice cracked as I finally spoke. "You drained my account." Mom, knitting needles, paused mid-click as she glanced up, touched brows, knitting in mild reproach. "Sweetheart," she cooed. "You have a good job, no mortgage, no kids. You're fine." Dad didn't bother to look from his phone, muttering, "Language, Mason," as if bills vanishing wirelessly were no more than a parking ticket. My chest tightened. Every familial crease in that room felt like betrayal. I watched Sarah shrug, unrepentant. "You left your login on the computer. Your own fault." The word stung, but the real pain came from the chorus of silence that followed. Nobody reached to help. Nobody offered an apology. Their "we needed it" chorus echoed in my head as I recalled every midnight text begging for rent, every birthday present they assumed I'd buy, every emergency loan that never got repaid. I imagined the kids craning their necks between sofa cushions, sensing the tension but not understanding the breach. My throat went dry as I tried again. "How could you?" But the question hung unanswered. Seth laughed, a low chuckle that reverberated around me. "We paid rent, bought groceries, survived. You didn't ask." And Sarah leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What's the difference if it passes through you or from your account?" Their logic twisted a knife. Kindness twisted into entitlement. I felt the room shrink as though walls pressed in. And in that moment, I realized silence was consent. My silence had been their cue to keep taking. No one offered to transfer back a cent. No one offered even a single heartfelt word. Instead, they smiled. Smiled as though I'd lost a simple bet, not my life savings. My hands balled into fists. I could taste anger on my tongue. I took a slow breath and said, voice low and steady, "I'm leaving." I grabbed my coat, its zipper sliding shut like a final heartbeat. And without waiting for them to process the weight of what they'd done, I walked toward the door, each step echoing the crack in our family's foundation. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time, I felt the sting of betrayal crystallize into resolve. This reunion had turned hostile, and nothing would ever be the same. It didn't start with $14,000. It started with a $50 phone bill one late night, a tiny hiccup that begged for immediate attention. I remember that first time Sarah called me in a panic about her phone being disconnected, her voice trembling as she begged, "Can you cover it tonight? I'll pay you back tomorrow." I transferred the $50 without a second thought, convincing myself that family helps family. That was phase 1. Microloans for minor emergencies, the kind of kindness that feels good in the moment and dangerous in hindsight. A few weeks later, Seth lost his job and texted, "Rent's due Friday. Anything you can spare?" I sent $800 to keep the lights on and the roof above their heads, picturing the kids sleeping safely while mine were miles away. That was phase 2. Larger sums, justified by real crises, but already creeping into expectation. Then came the grocery runs. "We're out of milk and bread, and dinner's ruined," Sarah fretted. So I swung by the store after work and filled her cart. The receipt totaled nearly $120 and felt heavier in my pocket than the bags I carried to her door. I didn't complain. I told myself I was lucky to be in a position to help, that love required sacrifice. But every favor birthed a follow-up request. When Sarah's daughter needed a birthday present, I volunteered to pick something special, convinced myself it was a joy, not a burden, until I realized the gift cost $300 and no thank you ever arrived. Then there was the car breakdown. A sudden knock at midnight, Seth's voice hasty on the line. "Transmission blew. I need help." I wired $2,500 the next morning, imagining the family's relief as he drove again. That was phase 3. Significant expenses that should have been shared burdens, not unilateral rescues. Over the years, the pattern became clear. Small favors paved the way for larger extractions. Kindness mutated into obligation, and my role shifted from supportive brother to endless wallet. Their gratitude dissolved into entitlement. Sarah lounged on the couch, sipping wine, while I replayed the bank notifications in my head. Seth leaned against the fridge with that smug grin, as though my help was his right. My own emergencies went unanswered. When I needed a day off to heal from a surgery, they reminded me of my good job and no responsibilities. Silence answered my pain, but demands answered theirs. Year after year, their requests stacked like blocks until I'd built a fortress of unpaid debts I could no longer sustain. By the time the reunion rolled around, the $50 phone bill was a distant memory, eclipsed by $15,000 in withdrawals. In that moment, I realized the true cost of unchecked generosity. A family's increasing withdrawals until the account, both financial and emotional, was empty. And when they snorted, "We needed it more than you," I understood that my kindness had become their entitlement. That realization crystallized my resolve. It was time to say enough. Time to reclaim my boundaries and remind them that favors are gifts, not guarantees. I slammed my laptop open and faced my own family in the middle of what should have been a warm dinner. The glow of the spreadsheet reflecting in their shocked eyes as I let the silence hang heavy in the room. On the screen lay every bank statement, every text message, every plea for help that had quietly emptied my account over the years. From the $50 phone bill Sarah begged me to cover late at night, to the $800 rent advance Seth asked for when his job disappeared, to the $2,500 car transmission repair that came like a midnight knock and never saw repayment. I pointed at the first column of figures and said, voice calm but unyielding, "This was phase 1. Small favors I offered freely. This was phase 2. Emergencies you elevated into expectations. And this," I tapped the grand total that loomed at the bottom, "is phase 3. Entitlement disguised as family support." Sarah scoffed from the couch, swirling her wine and rolling her eyes. "You're making a scene. This was for the household," she protested. But her words fell flat against the weight of my proof. Mom, knitting needles still in hand, sighed and murmured, "Sweetheart, we were struggling," as if her own financial desperation justified turning my savings into their lifeline. "Dad didn't even put down his phone," he muttered. "We trusted you to do what was right," as though my generosity carried an unwritten contract binding me to their demands. But I refused to let their denials rewrite the story the numbers told, that every request had come with an unspoken penalty, that when I hesitated, their affection turned to cold disdain, and when I tried to speak up, they laughed it off as drama. I leaned forward, eyes locked on Sarah's unrepentant glare, and said, "Empathy isn't entitlement, and love isn't a lending library where you check out what you need." Then I clicked the laptop shut, the snap echoing like a judge's gavel, and stood tall, feeling the adrenaline of truth coursing through me. "I'm done," I declared, my voice cutting through the stunned hush. I zipped up my coat in one decisive motion, each click sealing the boundary they'd long ignored. Without waiting for apologies that would never come, I walked out, the door clicking behind me with the finality of a verdict. In that charged moment, I reclaimed not only my dignity, but the right to say no, to honor my own needs, instead of sacrificing them to entitlement masked as obligation. As I stepped into the crisp night air, the betrayal I felt transformed into resolve. No more silent bailouts, no more unspoken expectations, just the hard-won freedom of a man who finally confronted entitlement and refused to pay the price again. I stayed at my desk until well past midnight, determined to turn years of whispered requests into undeniable proof. And that's when I printed every bank statement, every transfer confirmation, every text message that had slipped through silently into my account. First, I opened my online portal and downloaded PDFs of each monthly statement going back 5 years. The years I'd covered $50 phone bills, $800 rent advances, and $2,500 car repairs without so much as a receipt or a thank you. Then I pulled the email threads where Sarah pleaded for groceries, the text logs where Seth asked for help with tuition, and the screenshots of Mom's passive-aggressive jokes about my good job and no responsibilities being her lottery ticket. I imported everything into a color-coded spreadsheet, Phase 1 entries for small favors, Phase 2 for emergency bailouts, Phase 3 for the inflated sums that had ballooned into $14,000 in vanished savings, and watched the numbers line up in columns like soldiers in formation. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, nearly 1 in 10 elders report financial exploitation by relatives, a statistic I'd been too close to believe until I saw my own story spelled out in black and white. But seeing it laid bare galvanized me. Documentation is self-respect in action. I labeled each row with dates, categories, and notes. Groceries, car transmission, college deposits, so that anyone could trace exactly how kindness had mutated into entitlement. And I filed a formal fraud report online to ensure that this wasn't just a family matter, but a legal one. Throughout the night, I toggled between my spreadsheet and a bullet point outline in my notebook, structuring my approach in 3 clear steps: compile, categorize, confront, so that when I presented this evidence, there would be no room for their deflections or denials. As the printer whirred and churned out page after page, I felt the weight of every unspoken loan lift off my shoulders. Each printed sheet was a small exhale of liberation. I sipped cold coffee and let my mind race through the upcoming confrontation, framing my words around those bulleted phases while keeping the bigger picture vivid. They had taken my savings without consent, and now I had the receipts to show exactly how deep their assumptions ran. By dawn, my desk was a mountain of paper, and my heart a fortress of resolve. Because I knew that fact presented, frameworked, and flawlessly documented, would carry me through the hardest conversation of my life. And as I stepped back to survey my work, I realized that gathering evidence had already begun my liberation. In that moment, I wasn't just proving their wrongdoing. I was reclaiming my right to boundaries and respect. I heard 3 heavy knocks at the door, knocks that sounded more like a verdict than an invitation. And when I cracked it open, 2 men and 1 woman stood framed in the hallway, jackets branded Financial Crimes Unit. Their badges glinted under the porch light as the lead agent introduced himself calmly, clipboard in hand. "Mason Carver?" Nodding, I stepped aside to let them in. According to federal guidelines, any case of suspected elder or family member financial fraud triggers a preliminary field interview followed by a detailed evidence review. Within seconds, the agent spread my printed spreadsheet across the coffee table, aligning bank statements, transfer confirmations, and text logs in neat columns. A 3-step process of identification, verification, and interview laid out before my stunned relatives. Seth's smug grin vanished as he saw the rows of numbers. $800 rent, $2,500 car repairs, $50 phone bill. Each entry color-coded to show how small favors ballooned into major withdrawals. Sarah shrank back onto the couch, clutching her wine glass like a talisman, while Mom brushed her knitting aside as though she might knit her way out of this. The woman agent's voice was steady. "Mason, we'll need your formal statement." And I recited the timeline I had practiced. How Phase 1 microloans led to Phase 2 bailouts, and Phase 3 outright entitlement. As they recorded every word, I watched my family's defenses crumble. Dad's apathetic scrolling through his phone gave way to a pale stare. Uncle Mitch's toast of family solidarity echoed back at him as hollow. The agents then explained the next steps: a forensic analysis of account history, interviews with each party, and possible charges ranging from felony fraud to identity theft, depending on evidence strength. Their professional distance contrasted sharply with the personal betrayal I'd endured. Yet I felt relief rather than fear. These actions were necessary, I realized, because sometimes only the rule of law can restore trust when family civility has failed. By the end of the interview, the lead agent thanked me for my cooperation, tucked a business card into my hand, and noted the case number. The officers moved through the rooms, speaking quietly with Sarah and Seth, their voices clipped, factual, no mockery, no dismissals, just methodical inquiry. I stood back, heart pounding, as Olivia, the female agent, gently explained how victim restitution could be pursued if charges were filed. In that charged stillness, I saw how boundaries I'd long hesitated to enforce had finally been fortified by external authority. For years I'd borne the weight of unspoken expectations. Now, with badges and paperwork backing me, I felt the power of truth and the imprimatur of justice solidify my stance. When they departed, the door clicking shut behind them, I exhaled the tension I didn't know I'd been holding. My family remained inside, voices low and uncertain, confronted by a reality they had helped create. And I, for the first time, walked through my own front door, unashamed, unbowed, and certain that sometimes the bravest act of love is to call in the professionals when those you trusted most betray you. I didn't know where I was heading when I drove away into the night, my headlights slicing through the dark like a searchlight for the life I thought I'd lost. The engine's steady hum became a metronome for my racing thoughts as I steered onto the 2-lane road toward grandmother's old house, the one she always said would be my refuge if family ever turned on me. By the time I pulled into her gravel driveway, the world was silent except for the wind rustling through pine needles and the distant hoot of an owl. I killed the engine and sat there, the cool air drifting in through the open window. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel panic or guilt, just an odd, calming emptiness. I climbed out and let the front door click shut behind me, stepping into a foyer that still smelled faintly of her lavender sachets. I found the spare key hidden under a chipped terracotta pot, unlocked the door, and slipped inside as though I were a ghost reclaiming a home I'd never really left. The living room was exactly as she'd left it. Faded floral curtains, a well-worn armchair with a threadbare armrest, and a quilt she'd stitched in pastel squares draped over the back. I collapsed into the chair, coat and bag forgotten on the floor, and closed my eyes. I could almost feel her kind presence settling around me, reminding me that sanctuary could exist outside the chaos of tangled loyalties and unspoken debts. When sleep finally came, it was deep and honest. Not the fitful doze between worry and dread I'd known for so long. I woke just before dawn to a wash of pale pink and gold through the curtains, the kind of light that promises new beginnings. I padded into the tiny kitchen. The sink still held a chipped mug she always used for her morning tea, and brewed myself a cup of coffee in it, savoring the rich aroma as steam curled upward. The thermometer by the window read a crisp 52 degrees Fahrenheit, and I stood on the porch with my shoulders bare to the cool breeze, watching the sun rise like a promise. Later, I laced up my sneakers and ran the mile-long lane out to the bend in the road, where Dad taught me to fish as a kid. My feet hit the asphalt in easy rhythm, each breath feeling lighter than the last, and I realized how much I'd carried in my chest, years of unreturned loans, suppressed anger, and silent acquiescence, and how liberating it felt to let it all go with each stride. Back at the house, I made a quick appointment with a dentist for a cleaning I'd postponed when I was too busy bailing out bailouts. And then I scheduled a therapy session to unpack the grief I'd ignored under layers of false duty. I spent the afternoon volunteering at the local senior center, painting flower pots with retirees who shared stories without asking for a single dime, only offering gratitude and companionship. Evening fell slowly, and I cooked a simple dinner of roasted vegetables and grilled fish in a skillet, pausing to really taste each bite rather than wolfing it down between apologies. When I sat back on the porch with my second mug of coffee, the world around me was still and trusting. No urgent text or ringing phone to pull me back into obligation. In that quiet, I heard my own heartbeat, strong and unhurried, and realized that solitude wasn't loneliness. It was freedom, disguised as silence. For the first time, I felt home not as a place burdened by expectations, but as a space where my needs, my rest, and my peace mattered. I closed my eyes, inhaled the night air, and in that calmness understood that breaking free wasn't an end, but a beginning, a life reclaimed mile by mile, breath by breath. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Mom, her voice trembling as she pleaded, "You really mean it? We're still your family." I listened, but didn't reply. Hours later, Sarah's name flashed on my screen with a text that landed like a blow. "Power company shut off our heat. Ellie's freezing. We need your help." My chest tightened. Then Dad's terse message arrived. "This has gone nuclear. We all regret it." Their words stung, loaded with regret for their own discomfort, not accountability for their actions. According to a 2023 Pew Research Center report, 27% of adult children experience permanent estrangement over financial disputes, a reminder that money and trust rarely coexist in family conflicts. From these exchanges, I saw 3 patterns emerge. First, regret draped in guilt. "We're still your family," accused me of cruelty. Second, crisis-driven pleas. Power bills, looming foreclosure, car breakdowns, demanding I rescue them once more. And third, Unexpected solidarity. Cousin Jen's quiet text. That wasn't right. And Kelly's heartfelt email. You were brave. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Each plea read like a script. Apology coded in obligation. I pictured Mom trembling beside an unlit heater, Sarah pacing with despair, Seth scanning his empty account for hope. Yet even their emergencies felt rehearsed, tacked on whenever I tried to reclaim my peace. The fallout hit them swiftly. Sarah's account froze amid the fraud investigation. Seth lost his promotion after failing to disclose pending charges. Mom scrambled to refinance the mortgage at punishing rates, sending frantic updates. They might foreclose next week. Their mornings, once hopeful, now began with dread. Meanwhile, I traded their chaos for dawn runs along the lakeshore, coffee sipped in silence rather than crisis, and volunteer shifts at the senior center where I gave time instead of money. My phone stayed silent. My soul felt lighter. Then one afternoon, an unexpected message arrived from a high school friend. I saw what happened. Good for you for standing your ground. That external validation cut through the family clamor, reminding me that chosen bonds can heal when blood ties harm. True restitution isn't measured by cash returned, but by respect restored, boundaries enforced, and self-worth reclaimed. Studies show that estranged individuals often experience significant reductions in anxiety and stress once toxic ties are severed, a testament to the healing power of self-preservation. In the days that followed, I cleared Dad's voicemails, muted Sarah's texts, and left Seth's messages unread. Each unclicked notification cemented a new foundation, one built on dignity rather than debt. Their regrets echoed in my mind, but their apologies dissolved into my resolve. I closed my phone, stepped outside into the morning's gentle light, and breathed deep. The messages, regrets, and legal fallout had done their work. They exposed the true cost of unconditional giving and affirmed that sometimes the bravest act of love is to let go. In that profound silence, I found my freedom. A plain white envelope landed on my doormat one morning, bearing no return address but heavy with promise. And when I opened it, I found a check for $1,200 alongside a handwritten note from Kelly, my rarely seen cousin, expressing gratitude I'd never heard from any blood relative. You gave me courage to set my own boundaries. I'm sorry it took me so long to see the example you set. My eyes blurred as I traced her neat cursive, each word a balm to wounds left raw by years of unbalanced demands. I recalled the night's nursing anxiety over unpaid bills and the guilty knots in my gut whenever the phone buzzed. And I realized my sacrifices had not gone unseen after all. Research indicates that professionals who reduce personal financial stress can experience up to a 20% boost in job performance. A fact that resonated as I reflected on how much brighter my workdays had become since freeing myself from family obligations. I tucked the note into my jacket pocket, closed my door on an apartment in a new city where no one could intrude unannounced, and sank into my favorite chair, marveling at how far I'd come. Last month, I'd accepted a promotion with a notable raise and relocation support. Opportunities that only materialized once I focused entirely on my own goals. I thought about my restored routines. No more midnight coffee runs to catch up with bank alerts. No more agonizing over last-minute texts begging for rent. I replaced those anxiety-fueled nights with peaceful moments. Brewing a drip coffee without watching the account balance, scheduling dentist appointments and therapy sessions I'd postponed for years, and delighting in simple joys like a walk in the park without a care for looming bills. My blood pressure readings, once dangerously high, stabilized to healthy ranges, underscoring the profound link between mental well-being and physical health. Friends I'd once neglected now reached out without expectation, offering companionship instead of financial aid. I slept deeply through the night, my mind untroubled by familial crises, and even my local barista greeted me by name, remarking how I'd become a regular instead of a rescuer. I placed Kelly's check beside a photo of me on my grandmother's porch, my childhood sanctuary, and smiled at its symbolism. Not merely funds, but the courage to live by my own rules. No regrets lingered, only lessons learned. Self-care isn't selfish, and boundaries teach respect more effectively than endless generosity. That simple check symbolized not just financial closure, but affirmation that my life and my worth deserved safeguarding as fiercely as I'd protected theirs. I set the check and note on my mantelpiece beneath a small sign I'd carved months ago. Boundaries build bridges. As the morning sun filled the room, I kissed my reflection in the window and whispered, "Thank you," to the person I'd become. That final letter closed the chapter of my old life, and in its wake, a blank page waited, one I would fill with balance, dignity, and the freedom to choose my own path. Since reclaiming my boundaries, life has unfolded like a sunrise I once thought I'd missed. Mornings now begin with the rich aroma of coffee brewed at my own pace, not by a bank alert or a desperate text. And evenings end in the embrace of true rest rather than restless worry over unpaid bills. I sleep 8 uninterrupted hours, my blood pressure readings now in the healthy 120/80 range. And I wake energized for work, where my focus and creativity have soared by an estimated 20% since shedding that financial weight. I've swapped last-minute grocery runs for leisurely farmers market strolls, toxic phone calls for genuine conversations with friends who ask about my dreams, not my checking balance. And I spend weekends volunteering at the community garden, offering time without tolling my wallet. My apartment feels like a sanctuary, filled with plants I've nurtured and art I've chosen to hang because it resonates with my spirit, not my family's expectations. I've learned that real peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of self-respect. And studies show that seniors who set firm boundaries experience significant reductions in anxiety and depression. This freedom hums in the silence of my phone, in the laughter I share without guilt, and in the simple truth that I am valued for who I am, not for what I can provide. If my story strikes a chord, if you've ever been the family safety net or felt drained by unspoken obligations, know that you're not alone and that honor can be found in saying enough. I invite you to share your own journey in the comments below, where our community of resilient souls can uplift one another. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to join us for more heartfelt stories of strength, dignity, and the power of choosing yourself. After all, true family honors boundaries, and real love sets you free.